Hello, my fellow introverts. This is Stacy, your programming and testing expert. Today we're going to take a look at DDT, or data-driven testing. And before going into the code, I want to show you how the process looks like. Let's imagine we have a test and we're testing a login function. So in order to test the login function, you would need some credentials. Usually if you write a test, you would just call the login function and put the credentials here. But using DDT, you keep the test data separately from the test. So the username and password will be a completely different entity from the test. This gives us a couple of benefits. So first of all, if you want to change the test data, you just go ahead and do this. And this is the other data, the other username and password which we want to use in the test, but the code stays the same. What is even cooler, that you can actually use multiple test data and run the same test for this test data, this test data, and this test data. More even to say here is that you have some tools in different programming languages which allow you to generate tests. So for each of these test data, a new test case would be generated. You will not change the code will be the same, you don't have to copy it, but this test will be automatically run for this and this test data. Okay, so this is our test suite written in unit test case approach. So we have our class test login, and it contains two different tests, the test for regular user login and the test for admin user login. What you can see right away is that you have the code duplication here, because you have two tests that verify login, and the only thing that is different is the test data which is used in those tests. The rest of the code, it's pretty much the same. So this is a screaming case of using DDT approach, so we are going to do so. What we're going to do is we're going to use a library which injects the data for the regular user and for the admin user into the test, and we're just going to keep only one test and see how it's being injected and how it all works together. So let's first run the test suite to see how it looks like. We have collected 2 items and we have our tests running. Everything is fine and working. So now let's try to reorganize this a little bit and use the DDT approach. First thing that we have to do is to install the DDT library. It's called DDT, a very cool name for such an approach. So to do that, you will just normally do pip install DDT. I already have it installed, so I will not do that, but you can go ahead and do that as well, and you can also add it to your requirements.txt file. So now, as we have the library, we can do from DDT import DDT, and basically everything, every library which works with data-driven techniques or maybe some other ones as well, they usually work on decorators. So first that we have to do is to apply the DDT decorator to our class. Yep. So this is the first step. We already know that this is going to be a data-driven test, but we don't specify which data would be injected into the test case. So to do that, we have to import yet another decorator, which is called data. So this data decorator is applied to our test methods. So we are going to go ahead and apply this decorator to our first test method. And here in the braces you specify the values which you want to use inside of the test. So in our case we have pairs of values because we have to specify username and password. So I would prefer using a tuple here. You can use dictionaries as well, it doesn't matter. So let's use a tuple. So I will just go ahead and copy this one, put it here. This is going to be our first set of data, and now we can put in the second one. Okay, so we have the DDT class, we have the data, and we have to inject it into the test. So we need to specify a parameter here. Let's call it test data. And what will be happening is that once we run this test suite, the test data is going to be retrieved from here and then from here, and this value is going to go to the test data, and this one as well is going to go here. So we can go ahead and use it in our login function call. So we can do test data from 0 and test data from 1. Okay, so let's try it out. Let's run the test and see what happens. So let's take a look at the results. As you can see, we now collected 3 items because we have 2 test methods, but this one, the first one, is now using the data from DDT, and we kind of generate test cases here, and we are using this data for the first test case and this data for the second test case. It's pretty much visible here in the logs, because you can see that data is being used for these like names of the test cases. Okay, so as you can presume that we don't need this test case anymore, because we're already checking everything in the one of the methods, so let's go ahead and remove it. And what we can also do better is to make it a bit more descriptive. So we could go ahead and import another decorator here, which is called unpack. And if we apply this decorator to our method that is already using data, this unpack is going to separate what we give here into different parameters. So we could actually unpack it to username and password like this, and we could just go ahead and instead of passing test data from 0 and from 1, we could just specify that we want username and password being passed into the login. This all works only due to having unpack decorator here. Okay, so let's try to run it. Everything still works. It works pretty much the same, and this is basically the basics of the DDT library. There are multiple other decorators. I will put the link into the description so that you can take a look at other things that you can do with this library. One remark is that you can put this data into a test file, so you could then use the decorator file data. As far as I know, this file data decorator is only available for DDT. For other analogs of DDT, you wouldn't be able to do so. But in general, it works the way that you just have the file data decorator applied to your method, and you specify the file path here. So this is about it, the DDT. There are other options which you can use. If you don't use classes and you just use pytest, you can use pytest mark parametrize. So this would look something like this. You would use the decorator pytest mark parametrize. And this is pretty much it. I will also put the link in the description so that you can read more about pytest mark parametrize. And this concludes our video for today. So I hope you found this interesting, and have a happy coding, and see you in 1 week. Thank you.